we're in. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today's episode on the Construction Entrepreneur podcast is all about the metrics, the numbers, or for a better word, the KPIs of a business that you need to track. And specifically for a construction business, KPIs, if you've not heard KPIs before, it's key performance indicators of a business. So anyone switched on in the business sense, straight away we'll look at KPIs and you'll be able to see what problems are where and what needs to be solved around the business and what problems you've actually got. Because the thing is, numbers do not lie. Feelings and emotions do lie. You can think you're busy, you can think you're doing okay, you can think that everything's all right, but KPIs, solid numbers, solid data on paper is what really tells the truth about your business. It's a bit like doing your end of year accounts. The numbers just don't lie. It is what it is. Whatever revenue you've done, whatever net profit you've done, the accountants don't lie. The numbers are there, black and white, and that's what it is. But you need to know your KPIs daily, weekly, monthly, all the time. And one of the biggest common traits that I see and hear speaking to a lot of you guys that are owners of businesses is that you just wait until the end of the year to see how well the business is doing, and you're not quite sure where the profits come from, what jobs have been good, what jobs have been bad, how many quotes you've done, the clientele you've got, and all these different little bits. So it's all going to come back to KPIs that you as a business owner, you need to know, and you need to be tracking these. And if you're not, you are in a majorly risky problem and situation because you don't know what you don't know. If you don't know these numbers, you've got no control over your business. If I ask someone, what are these KPIs that we're going to go through, and you don't know them, that means and tells me that you don't know where your business is at, you don't know how well it's performing, which means if something's going wrong, you don't really even know. So you need to flip that and be in control of the KPIs and know your numbers, because when you are, it's what allows you as a business owner to make really good informed decisions. Because the numbers, again, they don't lie to you. If you know the right metrics in front of you, you know those right KPIs, you are then able to evaluate and go, well, based on what we know today in actual maths and reality, we know we can make this decision to get another employee, another member of staff, a bigger workshop, a bigger premises, take on a bigger contract because you've got the cash flow. All of these things, good decisions are built around actuals and the facts, not just around emotions and fear, worry, stress. You don't want those elements to be the basis of you making decisions. You want KPIs to be the decisions that you want to make. So I'll make this really nice and easy of the numbers that you guys need to know. And the first one is probably something you might not have heard before. And it's actually the cost per acquisition of a client. So it's known as CAC, C-A-C, cost of acquisition of a client. And what I mean by that is, what does it cost you to get a new client in your business? Because this is what allows you to scale a business up. If you know that it costs you, let's say £200 to get a customer in your business, then you know what your scalability path is like, and you know what it costs. So look and think about the customers that you've got. Where have they come from? Have they come from your website? Have they come from a direct referral? Have they come from a recommendation? Have they come from just you're already doing work on a particular road or an office or a street, and then someone's popped in and said, can you do this for me? You need to know all this stuff, because if you know your cost of acquisition costs for every decent client that you want, that is what allows you to scale a business without fear. Because if you spend £200 is going to result in, let's say, £1,000 net profit, but we'll get onto that shortly. You would keep doing that all day long. You would not stop doing that if you knew that was the numbers. If you knew you could spend £500 on SEO for your website and it's going to generate 4 leads and that's going to create 2 jobs, you'll know the net profitability of that and the type of client that it is, and you know that it works. Then you can spend more money on that to grow the business. So you need to know your cost of acquisition. And a lot of you won't know this because your business is purely based on what comes your way. You're not in that phase yet. Whereas you want to be in that phase where you do know that and you go, great, this is where all our leads come from, all the inquiries for the business, on the cost of that. And you might have to do it as a whole and go, well, I spend this much a month or a year on the website, on an advert, on a marketing campaign collectively, and work back and go, well, based on what I have spent in terms of advertising the business, even sign writing the vans, how many leads is that actually generated for you as a business? And then you're going to be able to work out on a global scale how much it's actually cost you per client that you've actually got. But you need to know your cost of acquisition. This is a little bit more of a high level thing, but the quicker you can get to know that and get to know that metric and that KPI, the quicker you can scale your business and see where you're really performing and doing well. So that is something that you really should spend some time doing that. You really should look back and go, right, where have you spent money in the attempt to gain clients? What marketing efforts have you spent money on? And how many inquiries, and then equally how many clients has that actually turned into? It's going to give you a cost per acquisition. You may have spent £10,000 over a whole year, and that has resulted in 50 clients. You've then got your cost of acquisition costs because you just know where you are. So it's just a really simple, easy way of knowing how you can scale your business. Then the next KPI you want to measure is your lifetime client value, because depending on your business and what you do, you may have clients that are repeat purchasers. They might come back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. You might have clients that you're only going to see you once. So if you know you're only going to see you once, it's quite easy to work out the lifetime client value. So let's say you do an extension for someone. It's a 30 grand extension. There's 6 grand profit in there. Gross profit, that means that the lifetime client value is 6 grand. Unless you know that they might actually refer you to someone else on an average of 50% of the time. So you can start working out or going, well, based on every 2 extensions we get, we know one of them is going to lead to another job. So actually that lifetime client value becomes a little bit more. So again, when you're starting with your cost per acquisition of a client, you can do your maths and start tracking this out and working out, right, where's a smart way to spend your money? But equally, lifetime client value of, let's say you're someone, it could be like something a lot easier, like decorating, for example. That client might typically redecorate their house every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And obviously they should be coming back to you if you've done a good enough job. If they're not, your marketing's shit, because you should be reminding customers that it's been a certain amount of time since they've redecorated. You might need to prompt people and customers. Or you haven't done a good enough service and they're going to try and find a different decorator when the time comes. But if you know that if you can win a client and you can decorate a whole house for, let's say, 4 grand, just as a rough figure, but you equally know in 3 years' time they're going to come back to you, you can start working out the lifetime client value of greater of what it is. And when you really understand that number, again, it allows you to make really good decisions and go, well, because sometimes in a business scenario, you arrange things and do things in a business. You might not earn as much on the first job because there's been a cost to acquisition of that client, but the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth job, you're making a hell of a lot of money because they're in your world, they're in your system. Obviously, it's going to vary massively depending on what you actually do, but in terms of like the whole industry, you want to be looking at this and go, well, how many times are these clients going to come back to me? How much value is actually from every person that you do a deal with and you do business with in your own business? How much is that client actually worth to you? And you want to start working that out and putting some pen to paper and going, well, you know that the lifetime client value is either £1,000 profit, £10,000 profit, or £100,000 profit. Because obviously, if you're doing stuff like big extensions, it may well be that they move house again in 5-10 years' time. They want to refurb that house and want to do another one. Each client could be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds to you, depending on what you do. So you really got to understand your lifetime client value and be in it for the long game to understand that. It's a really important metric and KPI to know. Especially like if you're in the commercial market, you might only have 4 or 5 clients that you do a lot of work for over and over again, because it's just repeat, maintenance, facilities, upgrades. So your lifetime client value might be even higher. So you really want to know that number and that metric. Next is your lead source. I've put this as a metric, I've sort of touched on this so far, but your lead source, you want to know and track where every single inquiry comes from in the business. Because if you're just doing it globally and go, well, I've had 30 inquiries this month, but you don't know where they've come from, you can't make good decisions on where you should actually spend your money and where you should focus on. Because let's say you are getting 30 inquiries in for a month, and you'll know the exact numbers for yourself, and you should do this for your own business. Track back and go, right, how many of inquiries have we had this month? And where have they come from? Because 5 might have come from social media, like an Instagram page or a Facebook page. 10 may have come from the website, and the other 15 may have come from referrals. So you're going to start seeing, well, if you actually focus more on referrals and actually improving that process, you get more of that because you already know you're pretty good at it already. And flip that, if you know that the majority and lion's share is coming through your website, you'd be better off putting some ad spend behind the website so that you show up more on Google, pay-per-click, SEO, all these different bits, because you know the website is a proven source of leads and you've got a process they're working. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong with marketing, is they just go like scattergun approach. They go a bit of this, bit of that. 1 minute you're doing an advert at the local football club for 300 quid and just doing a chance or a lottery ticket, which I don't think much really comes from that. 1 minute you're doing a little Facebook ad, 1 minute you're doing a bit on socials, 1 minute you're spending a bit of time and putting people to your website, but nothing really solid all the time. And when you find the one that really works for you, because you know these numbers, you know where your lead source, what's profitable and what's good, where the best customers come from, then you just double down on that. You just do more of that. You don't need to do more of different and start adding other different stuff to it. You just need to do more of what's already working and where those good clients are coming from. So you need to understand that and track, right, these are all the leads you've had for the month, and this is where they have come from, and that has led to this job, this job, this job, this job, and see the data and go, right, well, they're the best jobs we did, and that's the best source of leads that we've got in the business. Let's just fucking do more of that. Best way to act with that. Then the next KPI is your conversion rates. So when you actually cost jobs, how much you're actually winning. That's such an important metric to know. You really need to know, because if you are pricing a lot of work and you're not winning it, something is majorly wrong with your quoting stage. And you're just going to know that if you're tracking that metric. Equally, the flip side is, if you are winning every single quote you do, you are too cheap. Or you might already be earning good money, but it's an indicator that you can earn even more money and put more profit margin on and actually just boost the profits up. And that's the easiest way of making more money in a business, is just controlling that margin variable. So you need to track the conversion rates. And as a set standard in this industry, you're going to be talking like 30% conversion is like acceptable, like good. 30%, if you do 3 quotes, you win 1 out of that, and that's a really good, healthy sort of baseline. Yes, it can be more, it can be less, depending on what you're doing. But if you're doing 5 quotes and you're not winning any, there's something wrong. But equally, if you're winning all 3, the devil in me would just raise the profit margin slightly and keep tracking it, and then it just becomes a game with the business where you're actually just making money for free, because profit money is just it's just more profit money. The job still costs the same to do, but if you've got more profit on it, it's only going in your pocket, in the company's pocket, and it's at your benefit. So you want to be monitoring that number all the time. That is the most important metric all the single time. The 2 main metrics I used to track all the time in the business was, right, how much value have we actually quoted for the month, and what's our conversion rate. They're the 2 biggest numbers, because if you quote enough and you're converting at the right rates, it's going to equal into the right amount of revenue and turnover that the business needs. Okay, so that's really, really important to track. Now, the next one is the gross margin. You must be tracking the gross margin that you are going into at every job. You need to know and have a set gross margin that you apply to every single job that you touch. A company-wide margin is a base minimum. You know that once you've worked out the cost to do a job wholly, in the sense of materials, labour and plant, you then add on a sustainable, decent profit margin, and you need to know that margin. You need to know it like the back of your hand. You go, right, as a base level, we add X margin on, but depending on the job, you might add a little bit more margin on because you can get away with a bit more because you've been tracking your conversion rates. Or equally, because of the lifetime client value, that figure, and your cost per acquisition, you might go in a little bit lower on the margin because you want to win the work, because it's going to turn into more work and it's a lot more profitable on the back end. And this is the game that you've always got to track, but you need to know that base gross margin all the time without fail, so it's very, very clear. The next metric to know is your fixed cost, your operating costs that it costs just to run the business. If the business sat still and you had 0 work on, 0 clients pay you, 0 invoices paid, what are your standing still costs for everything that's not costed to jobs? So it's not materials, it's not labour that you wouldn't have if you didn't have jobs. It's all your fixed costs in terms of your offices, your vans, your materials, your subscriptions, your accountancy fees, your website fees, anything that it costs to run that business, that if you had zero work on, those direct debits and those costs are still going out. What is that central fixed cost? You need to know that all the time. You need to monitor that, because again, it's what's going to allow you to make good informed decisions. If you know you've got fixed costs of £10,000-20,000 a month just to keep churning over and just have the business lights on, you then know that if you're making a decent amount of gross margin and that's equating to a gross profit on the back end, you know your difference in profits, you know that you can make better decisions of going, well, we can now afford to take on a different employee, we can afford that bit more plant or kit, you can invest back into the business, we can afford the new marketing campaign, we can afford X, Y, Z, whatever it is. If you really know the difference between your fixed costs and your gross margins on all the jobs and when they're going to be invoiced. So you've got the difference, which is the last biggest KPI, which is the net margin, the absolute net profit at the bottom, pre-tax. You need to know every single month by doing a profit and loss. The only way you're going to get this figure is by doing a profit and loss, where you track every single job that the business has done and invoiced in a set calendar month. So from the 1st to the 31st, very beginning of the month to the end of the month, what have we actually invoiced and what is the gross profits on all of those jobs? You need to know that figure. If you don't know that figure, you don't know your business. You're not in control of your business. You need to know that is the gross margin. We've invoiced X amount at the top line, and we know that there is a gross margin in there of, let's say, £30,000, and you know you've got fixed cost overheads of £20,000, so you know your net margin is 10 grand, and you can work that out as a percentage to know that true net margin. These figures are non-negotiable, absolutely non-negotiable. They're not optional. They're not nice to haves, they are fucking must haves. If you do not have these, you don't know these numbers that I've gone through, and you might need to re-listen back to this podcast and sit down and work out where you're at. If you don't know them, you just don't know your business, and you are open to problems. You are open to surprises. You are open to maybe people not paying you on time or properly. You are open to maybe just getting to the end of the year and finding out what you've made, and it might not be what you quite want it to be. You need to operate and put the cap on when I'm speaking about this in this episode of this podcast, is you've got to wear the hat of businessman. And that hat requires you to know these figures and these numbers. And it's just non-negotiable. It's all well and good being just wearing the hat of delivering the jobs, doing the works, running the lads, organising jobs and meeting customers. That's great. But that is just one side of the business. The business end is all of these KPIs. So like I said at the start, if I know that I speak to a business owner and you don't know these numbers, I know exactly where all your problems are, and I know exactly what needs to be solved. So you've got to get your head around this, guys. It's just non-negotiable, okay? So they are the main KPIs. There are a lot more, but people try and complicate it and try and look at every single metric and every detail and have figures for fucking everything. But these are the ones that matter. These are the only ones that actually matter to you and your business, because you can then improve these figures. Because if you know that your conversion rate on quotes is lower, you know that's where you need to improve on the business. If you know that you're converting a lot of the quotes you're doing, you know that you could be charging more money, which by default increases the profits in the company. If you know that your gross margin is fairly tight, you know you've got work to be done there on pricing better, smarter, you're more informed, you know all your costs, and you just know you're making better money. That is the biggest skill set in this business, of nailing the pricing stage, the profitability stage, and the tracking all the costs on the jobs as they are live as well. And then equally, if you know what fixed costs you've got, you know your bare minimum, because you better work out, right, to keep the lights on, we need to invoice X amount of work every month. Again, if you don't know that figure, you are massively in the dark with your business. You should know that once you invoice the first 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand, whatever the figure is for you, that's great. Everyone's paid. We're all even. We're banging the money after that. You need to know that figure, because you need to be on the button with invoicing and the pricing side. It's the two bits. You've got to really know the numbers on the jobs, and you've really got to understand all the profits or the KPIs. Then you've got to make sure you're fucking invoicing them and getting the money in, and getting that cash in the bank, because that is what is going to affect massively the cash flow. And everyone says about cash flow as a problem, but cash flow is a result of not knowing all these KPIs. That's the end. That's the knock-on effect. Cash flow is not the problem. The problem is not knowing all these KPIs and not knowing all this stuff that I've just mentioned. If you know all that stuff that I've just mentioned, all the KPIs, you know all of that for a fact. It's all real and it's all genuine. It's factual. The cash flow looks after itself because you're ahead of it. It's a bit like there's been a storm and the ground's wet, but the rain stopped. It's too late. The ground is wet, and you're looking at it going, "Oh, why is the ground wet?" It's because it's rained already, and I hope you get that and understand what I'm saying. You're on the back foot. It's already happened. When you're looking at the bank or the cash flow or bills coming out and you're not in control of the business, it's because you're not in control of the KPIs and this stuff first. So that's where you've got to re-engineer it and think of it in that way. And all of these KPIs, this business side of stuff and the numbers side of stuff, think of it as your foundations of a building. Without this stuff, you are building off the shittest foundations possible. And in a building sense, we all know the best foundations equal into the best build. If you build off shit, off sand or clay, things are going to slip and cracks are going to appear. Very easy to get your head around that in a practical builder's sense or a tradesman's sense, or just a working practical person sense. But in a business sense, it's exactly the same stuff. Your KPIs, your knowledge on the pricing, your conversion rates, your lead sources, your fixed costs, your net margins versus your gross margins. That is your foundation. They are your building blocks of your business. So I hope that makes sense, and that's helped clear up what you need to be focusing on. Now, guys, if you don't know this stuff and you're hearing it and you're going, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't really know what I'm doing, then this is your opportunity to reach out to me, send me a message, because this is what I do with people inside Construction Entrepreneur. I basically plug in all the systems around this, get you pricing properly, get you knowing all of your KPIs, get you knowing your gross margins, your net margins, your fixed costs, and working out what is a fixed cost versus a cost of sale that you can actually charge to a customer so you're efficient. All of your conversion rates, your lead sources, the whole thing around the business side, the numbers side. I have a commercial brain. This is how I work, this is how I think, and it's what I'm good at. So that is what I now deliver as part of Construction Entrepreneur, as a mentorship program and a mastermind, to get you and get all this stuff sorted and solid. If you plug all this stuff in to your business that you're already doing well, you've already got good customers, you've already got good reputation, and this is your bottleneck. This will catch you. When you're very small and it's just you can sort of get away with it. But as you grow and you get employees, you get more lads, you take on more financial responsibility and you're going after bigger jobs, this will bite you on the arse. And this is what writes people off. And it's the very reason that 16,000 construction businesses a year go pop and they go under. So if you want to get ahead, get informed and get the right information that clients that I've worked with so far already have done, then you need to drop me a DM on Instagram. It's at Dean Barton Real, and I will hook you up and tell you how it works. But this is non-negotiable. You cannot question that for 1 second. And until you get it right, you will not understand. But once you do, it's just a massive weight off your shoulders. You know your business, you're in control of your business. And I see it in people I work with, the business just goes from strength to strength because you're not worrying about any of this type of stuff, and you know what you need to do just to grow the business, and you go bang, 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 and you are absolutely off. So that offer is there, guys. There's an opportunity there. You do have to qualify. It's an application process because, look, total transparency, I want to work with successful people already and make you even more successful and build you up. It's not for people just starting out. You've got to be at a certain level, and that's why there is an application process. So that if that is for you, drop me a message on Instagram. It's at Dean Barton Real. And I hope that's been useful, guys. So that is it for this episode, and I will see you on the next one.